Thank you so much for coming. My name is Yael Tamar, and I'm the founder of Women in Block, and also Top of Blockchain. The purpose of this organization, Women in Block, was to encourage women leadership in executive roles in the blockchain industry, which is an emerging industry by nature. And as every emerging industry, it gives opportunities for growth that are very abundant and quick as well. So if we can now generate a participation of women in this industry, I believe that within a few years we're going to lead. So that's the purpose of this organization, to share knowledge, to share opportunities with each other, to become experts as much as we can, and to lead the blockchain and crypto industry in the future. Today we are here thanks to two wonderful organizations, iAngels and Rise. Thank you guys so much for hosting us, and I'd love to invite Ilana to come and say a few words about Rise and the space where we're at.
Thank you. So I know it's early in the morning, but I think we really have to give a round of applause to the organizers and to each other. I have never seen, and I've been working here for close to 3 years, and we've hosted over 20,000 people for events in this space. I've never seen so many women come out for one event. And I think that, I hope that you all gain strength from each other, learn from each other. Even the people that don't get up on stage, there's a reason why each of you showed up here today, and that's already a unifying factor. So getting to know each other and getting strength from each other, that's what I definitely plan to get from this event. So I really hope you enjoy. A little bit about this space. This is one of the fintech centers of Tel Aviv. We help fintech entrepreneurs gain access to banks, gain access to global investors. If you are interested in the fintech space or blockchain space, we'd love to help. We have office space, we have an accelerator program, but most importantly, we have a community. So we'd love to see you here again. Definitely come up and introduce yourself and enjoy today.
Thank you so much, Ilana. And now I'd love to introduce to the stage Ms. Shelly Algoyan, who's the founding member of iAngels. And today we're going to discuss the future of the blockchain industry, blockchain crypto industry. Good morning. Good morning. Let me give you a microphone. First of all, I'd love to hear a little bit more about iAngels, if you can give us an overview. And I also heard that 80% of the organization are actually women. Is that true?
Yes, it's true. Now maybe 90. So iAngels is a VC platform and investment firm that I founded together with More Asia 5 years ago. And we facilitate investments into Israel entrepreneurship and into startups in Israel, mostly dedicated to software. From investors all over the world. We have investors today from 45 countries, close to 1,000, and we manage over $150 million.
Great, thanks. So I'd love to hear your opinion about the market. Everybody's worried about the market, what's going on, what happened this year, and just to share the perspective of how it's different from any other industry, or what are the similarities of these ups and downs in other industries as well.
Well, blockchain is a phenomenon and an innovation that's at very, very early stages. In the last year, let's say from 2017, we've experienced a bull run in both Ethereum and Bitcoin, and many people that have made investor returns from these protocols have wanted to invest more and support the ecosystem, which has fueled a lot of projects that were created to build a blockchain. And because this period was basically led mostly by retail investors and people that don't necessarily have experience in investing. We experienced a lot of excitement and a lot of exuberance. And as the market started cooling off, we're seeing more and more people and more investors increase kind of their expectations and increase their standards. And so right now we're kind of at a cooling off period. We're still at the very early stages of the blockchain, meaning that the infrastructure and the technology driving blockchain is still at very early stages. And so it's difficult today to build real-world applications on top of the blockchain. So today a lot of entrepreneurs and basically teams are working on building kind of those building blocks. And so we're still at a very exciting period. It certainly cooled down a bit. There's more regulatory scrutiny, but it's a good thing overall.
So what's next then? So what are we going to be seeing at the end of this year in 2018?
I think it's really a period where founders and investors are kind of putting their heads down to work and create products. And the first step before I think we're going to experience the next step up is really for us to start seeing products being shipped and products that are being used. And I think it's going to take maybe a couple of years from now. There are many investors and corporates entering the space today, and they're looking for ways to invest and to participate in the economies. There are questions about what role will the investors have. I mean, is it just kind of providing capital, or will investors take a more participative role in the companies that they're involved with, whether it's incubation, whether it's mining, whether it's actually helping building out the protocols and the applications. And so many things, both on the kind of structural and economic side, but also on the technological side, are being figured out as we go. And I think in many ways it can be compared also to the evolution of internet, which took several decades until we actually experienced full force how internet changed our lives.
So are there any specific subsectors of blockchain and crypto that are, let's say, hot right now for investors? Anything that the investors are looking for?
Well, I think the most immediate term in terms of blockchain is still building out the tech stack. So we've been involved and we've been investing in projects that are working on building infrastructure, building blockchains. For example, Telegram. For example, here in Israel, we invested in a company called Space Mesh, which built a novel consensus mechanism that highlights fairness and trust within the ecosystem. I think we're at a point in time where, in order for institutional investors to enter the blockchain space, they need proper custody solutions. So we've been investing in companies, for example, like First, that are working on building a bridge between corporates and institutionals that want to enter the space and want the security, and also in companies like cybersecurity companies like Puzzle that are working on cybersecurity and storage solutions, which is also an area where Israelis excel.
It's very strong, right? So, what is your position on ICOs, initial coin offerings, and how do you view them vis-a-vis traditional equity investment, or maybe there is a space for both or a combined type of view?
So I think the greatest thing about ICOs is that it really that it created a mechanism for people from all over the world to invest, and it's basically an evolution of crowdfunding, if you think about it. And it gives projects and entrepreneurs the ability to reach thousands and thousands of people and collect small amounts of money or digital assets from them in a very short period of time. The ICOs, though, need to be adjusted. They need to be adjusted to provide more investor protections, to provide more of an alignment of interest. I think the biggest problems that the market suffered, and one of the reasons for what we would call kind of the bust in the ICO bubble recently, is the fact that that there was no alignment of interest between kind of token holders and founders, in the sense that people wanted to treat blockchain startups as though they're regular startups, like equity startups. It's not the same as when I invest, for example, in Apple stock, and then I know that I have a share in Apple, and I'm entitled to any kind of profits that Apple provides over the years. In blockchain, or when you're investing, for example, in a utility token, there's actually no connection and no correlation oftentimes between the token that you're buying and the economic value that the protocol creates. And so what we saw is a lot of entrepreneurs going out and raising money and focusing very much on the short term on raising that money, but then nothing that really ties these teams and these entrepreneurs to the investors or the people who funded the project in the long term. And so I think that what we're going to see in the next couple of months is investors and founders and entrepreneurs really working together on finding ways to build these new economies and build these new networks in a way that create value for everyone, and alignment of interest for everyone, and more investor protections.
And the last question is, if anybody were to enter this industry right now, do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Words of wisdom. Well, it depends who is anyone.
Let's talk about entrepreneurs.
I think for entrepreneurs, it's really a question of finding something valuable that you want to do that really requires a blockchain, and that no one else is, or that there aren't already kind of established teams that are working. Because if there are talented entrepreneurs or talented developers, there are a lot of teams today and a lot of groups that have a lot of funding and very ambitious projects, which you can easily connect with them and try to help them. And I think today for the blockchain, it's really the whole market of kind of short-term flipping and raising money is gone. So you really have to think about this long-term and come in with the breadth and the understanding that it's like any startup that takes, several years, oftentimes 10 or more years to build a real company, build a real business. There's no difference here.
Amazing, thank you so much. So that was a very insightful conversation on investment aspect of blockchain. Now I would like to give an overview of blockchain in Israel. All right, so can someone here tell me, what is the point of innovation? Any ideas? Why do we innovate?
Upgrading society.
Upgrade society. Okay, anyone else? Decentralization, so that's the point of blockchain innovation, right? Innovation in general. Why do we do it? Why do we have startups?
To create something new.
To create something new.
It's part of the human DNA to innovate.
Because we evolve, right? We want to change things. Maybe we have some problems we need to solve, right? Right? We pick up a stick, make fire, right? So basically, we innovate because we want to make the world a better place. We want to make life better for ourselves. We want to change and evolve, right? So those are the points of innovation. So I'm here to argue that blockchain is basically that kind of evolution in innovation. It has all of these attributes, and some people argue that it's one of the most influential technologies since the internet. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of different projects in this market in order to see exactly why blockchain is so innovative. About 20% of Israeli startups are operating in the space already. There's been a lot of successful fundraising rounds in the ICO shape, initial coin offering, notably Bancor with $150 million last year. And just like any other, just like the internet, blockchain is spread over a lot of different sectors, right? So we have, for example, fintech startups in the blockchain space with some interesting, notable examples of Carrots, which is diamond-backed stablecoin, Koti, which is a platform, DAG-based platform for payment networks and stablecoins, and later on we're going to have a conversation with Tamar. Holu, which is a community-based coin platform. Banks is a platform for which enables people to invest in fractable assets and have access to the world's real estate and other assets, and many, many others. So fintech space is ripe with innovation for blockchain, of course. Infrastructure-based protocols. As Shelley mentioned, this is one of the most important sectors in blockchain right now. Why? Because this is the ground. This is the ground floor on which we're going to build the apps and things that are making our lives better, that are providing solutions to the problems that we have, right? So some notable examples are, of course, Bancor, which is a platform for creating coins, Orbs, which creates more efficient ways to do transactions on the blockchain, and things like Platin, which is a geolocation-based consensus mechanism. Zen is a very interesting and notable startup as well, creating zero-knowledge proofs for data transfer via blockchain. Even Vitalik Buterin of Ethereum mentioned that they're looking into their zero-knowledge proof algorithms. So Zen is really an interesting case. IOLite provides a solution for professionals and coders to create smart contracts with just using their natural language. So smart contract is a very interesting blockchain concept in which you can operate any sort of an agreement or any sort of a business relationship automatically when certain conditions are met. So I foresee in the near future to have a lot of applications in this space. Security, of course, is a very big sector in Israel and in blockchain as well. So several companies here are Kirobo, which provides a solution for crypto keys to prevent them from being stolen or lost by creating a sub-wallet. So that's a very interesting solution. Hasera is a zero-knowledge proof security. Let's see what else. In the supply chain, today we have a presentation from Dana from Olam, which is an open source supply chain network which provides transparency into the supply chain ecosystems. In the space of this media, telecom, and travel, an interesting example is Vegan Nation, which is close to my heart, being vegan. Excited to use a vegan coin for transacting for all the products online and offline that are vegan. What else do we see here? Steering Labs is creating the most secure mobile device for using cryptographic transactions. Clan Play is an interesting gaming application providing monetization for gaming, for games and apps. Dynetics is a DNA on the blockchain, placing DNA and encrypting DNA information on the blockchain and creating a marketplace around it. Proofwork is an interesting medical data encryption and transfer startup. WeMark is a good example of use blockchain and copyright for sharing images and purchasing images online. So that's a very quick overview of the blockchain industry in Israel. I'm sure there are many other notable startups and examples. So I hope that blockchain industry is going to develop in the direction of adoption. Right now we have a lot of platforms in the blockchain space, and we have obviously certain applications. So in the next few years, what we're really going to see is an adoption play. Companies are going to adopt blockchain solutions, and the market is going to develop in a certain way. So now I'd love to invite Sharon Zalewski from EY, and she is the partner for the blockchain industry and crypto industry, and we'll talk to her about the new trends.
So hi, good morning everyone. It's great to be here. I've attended a lot of blockchain, ICO type seminars and sessions, and it's very refreshing to see so many women in the same room together, and it gives me strength and is inspiring. So thank you, because we definitely need more diversity in this industry. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes that I've been allocated to talk a little bit about blockchain and the Industrial Revolution as the way we see it in EY. I'm a partner in the high-tech practice here in EY Israel, and I'm also the ICO leader. And I'm also part of the team globally. Here in Tel-Aviv, we have a blockchain hub that does research and projects for EY on a global level. What we're seeing right now is, there's been several what you call industrial revolutions. We are in the Industrial Revolution of 4.0, where there are several digital technology trends and that we are living in the last couple of years, and we will be changing our life in the next couple of decades. Anything from autonomous cars to robotics to AI to IoT, and of course blockchain is definitely up there. So the way EY is a big believer in blockchain. I've invested a lot of resources and money in understanding this industry, and as we are big providers of trust to enterprises in the world, we need to be able to find those solutions for blockchain as well. So we do believe that blockchain will do for networks of enterprises and business ecosystems what the ERP did for a single company back then. So why are business enterprises so excited about blockchain? We live in what's called an uncertain world with lack of trust with many parties, and of course the value proposition of doing business on a blockchain will enable us to, one, enforce contracts with a smart contract rather than do things on a manual basis. Two, better asset tracking and transparency, specifically in companies that have very complex supply chain management. And of course, cutting out third parties that are unnecessary, middlemen and commissions and time efficiency. But what is interesting is that we still see that in this industry, enterprises that are adopting blockchain use cases, they're still not going public, into public networks. And the reason being is, and it was already mentioned previously, that companies don't feel comfortable they can conduct transactions on a private and secure manner on a public network. And I think Shelley said that, and it's true. The blockchain industry is very initial. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there in the infrastructure for us to be able to really rely on the blockchain. Every person here in the room is an average user, use it on a public level and feel comfortable. So there are amazing technology enablers, infrastructure protocols being developed now, zero knowledge proof, ways to make the smart contracts more auditable with regulatory features. So there's a lot going on in that space, and a lot of R&D that we are doing in EY, and we're seeing several startups, particularly the Israeli ones, working on. So just a little bit about, for blockchains to be something that we will rely on, trust on, we, for example, have been developing a lot of assurance tools to be able to verify KYC, AML procedures, to be able to audit smart contracts, both the security of that digital contract and the functionality. There have been a lot of fraud and issues and errors with smart contracts in the last 2 years. And just like any other business, you need processes, you need controls. The fact that the blockchain is an immutable network doesn't mean that you don't need a whole a whole process of controls and assurance around it. And that's something that we have already developed a lot of tools and are excited to be the first ones in the market with a lot of these tools. So what I want to spend the next couple of minutes talking about, I know that generally when we speak about blockchain, we see that in financing and banking, in that industry, it's kind of the intuitive use case. But there are several use cases and cross-industry sectors that are interested in the use cases of blockchain. And many of them are our clients that are coming to us and saying, we want to learn more about how this can improve our business. So we've seen everything from pharmaceutical and healthcare, where, as you can imagine, in pharmaceutical companies, the supply chain process is very complicated, where you've got safety, you've got security, you've got privacy, over various jurisdictions, so it's a way to manage that on a more cost-efficient basis. More traditional industries like art and diamonds, one of our clients that was mentioned at Carrots, whereby you will be able to verify the authenticity of underlying assets through management in the blockchain, which is very useful, and even governments that are thinking of doing a voting system that's decentralized. So it's exciting to see all the industries really chiming into this technology. I'm going to go through two cases that EY is actually providing kind of end-to-end solutions to our clients. So wine, what does wine have to do with blockchain? We have a client, a boutique winery in Italy, where they've had a lot of issues with what's called the business of fake wines. By the way, that's like a $3 billion business, where there's forging wines by putting the labeling and customers not getting the product that was actually what they intended to buy. So the way they wanted to solve this problem is basically came to EY to develop an end-to-end blockchain solution which will help them manage supply management from when the bottles come out of the winery to the trucks, to the distributors, to the customers. So what happens is if a customer holds a bottle of wine, they've got a barcode on it, whereby they can, through blockchain database, see the authenticity of that bottle, which is pretty amazing and gives the customer a feeling that they know the value of the asset they're holding. And secondly, for the company itself, they have a much better insight on what's happening in the gray market and distributional channels. In addition, they finally have a kind of a direct relationship with their customers, because a lot of times when these bottles are being sold through distributors, etc., they don't know where they're located. So it also helps with marketing and business development as well. Another use case that we're very, very excited about is that EY has launched together with Microsoft a solution for content rights and royalty management in the media industry, and I'll be more specific. For example, the gaming industry today, when Xbox, a developer of a game, there's authors and there's people that are providing content and distributors and various participants in the supply chain of providing a license that are supposed to derive royalties from the sale of that IP or that license. Today, the way that these royalty contracts with the participants in the supply chain are managed is all done manually. It's a manual reconciliation of 45 to 90 days, where you have millions of transactions of use of licenses, and it's billions of dollars of royalties being paid. So basically, the solution right now is a blockchain solution where you've got embedded smart contracts, where each smart contract defines the royalty agreement, and the calculations are done automatically. So what took 45 to 90 days to take takes about 4 minutes to process, which really is a game changer in this industry, because one, it provides transparency for participants that are supposed to derive royalties, whereby they know, almost done, royalties where they know where the money is coming from. Two, they get real-time information about where the sales are and where the market needs are so that they can adjust accordingly. And three, it's a very cost-efficient process. So this is a use case that we're hoping to use it in various industries like oil and gas and other industries where there's a lot of participation and royalty rights, etc. So that's just to give you on a very high-level overview, a couple of examples of what's going on in the industry and will impact our day-to-day lives as well. So again, thank you very much for your time. Oops, this was my last slide. I'll be happy to take questions. I know we don't have time now, but later on I'll be here. Go ahead.
Is it running on Ethereum? The licensing fee?
Currently, it's running on Quorum and the Microsoft Azure infrastructure. I think that at this point, it's being tested by the biggest game publisher of Microsoft, which is, I believe their name is XVSoft. But I'm not sure about that. I can check for you.
Quorum is blockchain?
Yes. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love that example of the use cases of the wine and the copyright on blockchain. That's great. So now I'd love to invite Meira Harel from MH FinTech, right?
Hi everybody. I can speak without, I can speak. Last time I was here, the microphone didn't work and I had to change it, I had to flip microphones, and at some point I said, well, I have 3 kids, I could just shout, right? So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the future of finance, a lot of what's happening. I can't say in blockchain and crypto, because the picture wouldn't be full calling it what's happening with the financial system in blockchain and fintech and crypto, because there is another part in this puzzle that is kind of moving things forward in the financial sector. And I do not have a clicker. Yeah. All right, now a little bit about myself. I'm the former COO of Bancor, and for 7 years I've been the business development manager of UmiTrade, securities trading website. I now advise regulators, banks, and startups in dealing with what I see as, I'd say, the next step in the evolution of finance. That's how I see what's happening right now. And like I said, when you look and kind of zoom into the financial sector, you see that there are various forces that are pulling things in different directions. And that's what makes trying to predict the future kind of tough, because each direction is pulling in a different area, and we'll be able to see where things are going when the dust kind of settles. I'm going to be talking about 3 different, I'd say, verticals that are affecting what's happening. And I'm going to start with the first one. Why do I have this picture here? Does anybody know?
The internet. It's an institution.
Okay. The truth is that the financial sector has new players. Okay? And more than new players. These guys. And they're scary. Okay? Because they can create solutions in the financial sector that the regular banks have a very, very hard time dealing with. Okay? And they're already giving loans. I'm not just talking about transferring money from one to the other. I'm not just talking about payment solutions. They're giving loans. They're enabling investments, okay? And one of the tech companies that doesn't appear here but should be here is WeChat in China, which kind of like shows the extreme of where a technological company can create value in finance. It's like WhatsApp. Who knows what's what WeChat? Okay, for those who don't, I'm going to say like this. Imagine yourself on WhatsApp, where you can transfer money. That's easy. You can pay at a store when you're going with the QR code. But when the money kind of ends in your wallet that's connected to your WhatsApp WeChat, you can just either add more money, but you can also take a loan. And if you have a lot of money there, you could try to invest it through them. Now tell me, is WeChat a technological company or actually a bank? Okay? So when we're talking about the forces that are affecting the financial ecosystem, you can't ignore these guys. And they're more, I'd say, they're ahead of what's happening with crypto and blockchain. These are things that are like the next step. So when I advise banks and regulators, this is the first thing that they're seeing. This is the threat, okay? Because the implications are very wide. Imagine yourself, you go opening a bank account in Israel, allowing all of the customers to come and use their bank. And the nice thing is that the business model that they have in comparison to banks is different, right? Do they take commissions? No, what do they use? Data, okay? This is a completely different business model. So when we're talking about the financial sector, keep in mind that this is the first threat. Blockchain and crypto could be the next in line. And maybe that's one of the reasons that that you don't see a lot of banks and financial sectors. They're kind of like iffy, and you're kind of asking yourself, Why are they not entering into this field? Because they're kind of busy with the real threat right now that's happening, that's the imminent threat, which is the big technological companies. So let's take a look at what could happen with blockchain and crypto and see how that can affect the financial ecosystem. I'm going to start with blockchain, okay? Blockchain at its source comes and says, I want to get rid of the middleman, right? All of the middle people in the middle, and who's a better example of a middleman than a bank? So theoretically, you could come and say that blockchain could nullify the need for banks, right? This is kind of like an extreme scenario. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm sure that there are a lot of crypto people that would be happy, and even people from outside of crypto that would be happy to see this happening, but it's not necessarily what's going to happen. A less severe, I'd say, prediction or scenario is, and this we're kind of seeing happening right now in the world, is that banks around the world or financial institutions are actually using blockchain kind of like, I'd say, a connecting tissue between them, okay? They would do, let's say, the KYC. Why does the customer need to answer the KYC in different times every time he's moving from bank to bank? Wouldn't it make more sense to have all that information in one place and then the bank's kind of using it at the same time, right, from different directions? So this kind of a solution, this kind of a scenario is something that we're seeing already happening. In Europe, you have examples of this. Consensus is working very hard on this. You have companies in this space giving these kinds of solutions. Another scenario that could happen with blockchain is that the banks will simply use it as some sort of internal database, okay? Is it better? Is it not as good as the legacy systems? Right now, I want to remind you that the banks still have a problem, and whoever comes from the banking industry will know this, with their systems. Literally, when you need to take out data, you have different systems that do not communicate with each other, okay? I could go into stories about this, but this is one of the main issues that the banks are still dealing with. Is blockchain the solution? I'm not sure yet. But this is the scenario that could happen. This is a nice place where blockchain might be able to enter. Let's take a look at the other side of things, crypto, okay? If we look at crypto in regards to the financial services, we can see two directions where crypto could go, okay? It could be a form of currency, right, which has its implications, we're going to look at them, or it could be some sort of tool for investment, okay? Let's take a look at that and see where things could be going with that just a minute. Let's start with crypto as a form of currency. What does that mean for banks, okay? Does that mean, let's say right now what they're doing is kind of like saying, we're out of the game, we're not doing that. But that kind of like ruins the idea of banks as a body that keeps the value for its customers, right? Okay? So that means that theoretically, if the banks want to keep their position as the people that are taking care of value, then it wouldn't make sense for them to start opening bank accounts for crypto. What does that mean? Think about the technological side of it. Do they need to be opening wallets? What does that mean if they want to, would they use it as another kind of foreign currency? Would they be able to trade it? The implications of that are pretty wide. Right now, they're still at the point of, it's kind of dangerous and we don't know how to play with this. But I think that the more interesting side of things is actually looking at the macro level of economics, okay? Because as we all know, and whoever has learned a little bit of macroeconomics knows that the amount of money in a given country is actually a tool, as in a monetary way, okay? It affects the inflation rate, it affects, it's a tool that can help against financial crises, right, and inflation. Now imagine a place, and we're almost there, where anybody could create a token and a currency. Now what does that mean in regards to the amount of money that you have in a country, okay? Okay, now this is something that actually needs to be studied and needs to be thought about, because theoretically, if we're kind of like letting go of that monetary tool of holding, the amount of money on a certain level in order to affect the macroeconomics, what does that mean? Could the next financial crisis happen because us as a humanity are not careful enough with the creation of new money? Okay? That's an implication. I advise, I told you, regulators and banks about all of these things, and this is a question that think of it from the regulator side of it. You don't want to stifle innovation, right? You want it to continue. But on the other hand, you do not want to get to places that could create financial crises. All these regulations were not created in vain. They were created after financial crises happened, and they said, okay, we understand this and this is wrong, let's put laws there. Right now we're going into a new territory. What are the implications of creating so much different kinds of money? The last one I'm going to be looking at, because I think our time is almost up, is looking at crypto as an investment tool. Let's look at that from a point of view of the financial system. Right now, there are certain types of asset classes, right? Stocks, bonds, ETFs, right? Options, and the last one that was created. Who knows what was the last asset class that was created? No, not yet. They haven't yet been created. Mutual funds. Okay? That means that the humanity invented the last tool of investment that was invented officially. Okay, before utility tokens, I call them the next thing, are actually mutual funds. They were invented only in the 90s, something like that, in the last century. Okay? That means that right now, what we are seeing is the creation of a new kind of asset class. Now, it's not actually one type of asset class, because with blockchain and crypto, it can open the door to many different kinds of asset classes. So we know the one that's called a utility token, and some people use it as an investment. Okay, that's nice. But let's think about the next kind of asset classes that could be invented. Could you imagine a token that also doesn't give equity, like Chevy said earlier? Maybe it doesn't give equity, but it does give some sort of dividend on the revenue that you created in that year. That's a new kind of asset class. Or what if you create a new kind of security token that allows you, let's say if it's an Amazon token, Amazon currency or token or asset, that will let you have a certain amount of I'd say, things are on sale, and you get the amount, the percentage of sale according to the amount of tokens that you're holding. These are new types of asset classes, okay? And again, now you need to think, okay, so what does that mean for the financial system? Does that mean that these things are going to be traded on NASDAQ? Are there going to be new exchanges? How is it going to be possible to exchange these kinds of assets with the ones that we already know that exist right now? I'm ending. I can see many faces of me. As you can see, there are many forces. We only looked at 3 aspects of things that are affecting the financial ecosystem. It's very interesting, and the changes are in many different directions. I can only say, I can quote Gordon Moore, the Intel founder, that says that change has never happened this fast before, but it will never be this slow again. Thank you.
Thank you. Very insightful and very scary. What's going to happen? So I need about 30 seconds to plug in a clicker. So does anybody here who's not on a schedule want to come up and give a 30-second pitch of their blockchain or crypto startup? Male or female? Anybody? There you go. Block TV, right? There. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Hopefully I'll be done.
I didn't prepare that, but let's go. My name is Eliran Levy. I lead the fundraising of Block TV. Block TV is the new revolution of the blockchain system. We are right now building what we found that there's a huge vacuum right now in the blockchain. You know, this industry is a $250 billion of industry, and yet the governments almost ignore it totally. Google, Facebook, and Twitter are not letting anybody advertise, and even Bloomberg and CNBC hardly covering the sector. So we are entering in this vacuum and starting to produce from the, January 2019. We are starting a new TV channel that's going to be the authority of blockchain. We are going to have commentaries. We are going to have TV shows live 24/7, 365 days a year. All with coverages all over the world. Our base is going to be here in Ramat Gan, but we are going to have also a studio in New York, in Tokyo, and in London.
Background about yourself.
Hi everyone, good morning, thank you. I'm the former acting CEO of the Tel-Aviv Stock Exchange, and today I'm doing something much more exciting. I'm a research fellow researching cyber law and policy, trying to understand blockchain governance. And today, as Yael said, I'm going to discuss something practical, not philosophical, about some myths about disintermediation and blockchain, and actually professionals in building stable, efficient, and decentralized mechanisms. So, would you believe me if I say that during the 135 plus years, the fees that we have paid to financial intermediaries, banks, stock exchange brokers haven't changed, and they approximately reflect 2% of our own transactions. Well, what bothers about this number, that despite of all the changes in informational technologies, improvement in informational technologies and innovation, the cost of intermediaries have not gone down. The main promise of the blockchain is to contribute to disintermediation, as you can see right here, and to lower two key transaction costs. The key of verification, this is actually can contribute to the lower of the fees that we pay to our intermediaries and to the cost of the networking. But shifting very fastly, because we don't have much time from theory to practice, I want to share with you two very different use cases. Well, the first one, is the token sale landscape use case, and I especially chosen a non-controversial use case. Well, back in the simple and happy days, an ICO mechanism was supposed to be a decentralized P2P funding mechanism where an entrepreneur can directly raise funds from the crowd with just a couple of lines of code and make your token. But those days are over. And during the last 2 years, the landscape, the token landscape, was totally disintermediated through all token lifecycle. Well, it started with marketing agents that were allegedly closing get-together costs, continue with rating agencies that allegedly closed asymmetric costs. We have ICO pools, we have market allocators. These two are actually fulfilling the role of traditional financial intermediaries, like underwriters, for example. We have, of course, the venture capitalists that appeared just last year when it was worse for them. They wiped the decentralized nature of the market, they replaced the crowd. We have liquidity providers, we have market makers, exactly like we have in traditional capital market. And last but not least, we have the most dominant, concentrated, centralized intermediaries in the landscape, the crypto stock exchange. Well, this process and this landscape could not have been so different and far from the theory and the libertine dream of a decentralized P2P funding market to SME and growth companies, which is, from my opinion, a very important thing to build. A very different use case to convince you that I'm not bullshitting, I can use those words. One of the most promising use case for enterprise blockchain was the Assets blockchain. Back in the end of 2017, Assets, which is the biggest stock exchange group in Asia Pacific, announced that it's going to implement blockchain within its clearing and settlement systems. Well, and she said, and it's very logical, that it's going to reduce transaction costs and it's going to dramatically reduce the risk to its clearing member. Well, a couple of months ago, they published the updated white paper, and it seems like their blockchain got lost because there is no peer-to-peer interaction between their participants. All the nodes are going to one place only, a central authority, Assets themselves. It seems that, again, technology is failing to bypass the central authority. Why? Why is it happening? Is there some secret, malicious intermediary influence? Maybe. Well, by the end of this month, we're going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Nakamoto paper, and it seems like that we are still in the early days of blockchain technology implementation. Well, I'm blockchain bullish, but 10 years after PayPal was launched, it had 60 million users, Amazon had 70 million users, and the credit card companies were doing much better. Well, I had many examples. If blockchain is the FUD machine, well, no, it's not. I'll try to explain.
FUD is nobody knows what's funny.
No. Blockchain is not the FUD machine, and actually the FUD machine is for the trust machine, because it is probably, most of you know, blockchain was named as the trust machine. And it's not the FUD machine, it's the trust machine, but I think that 10 years later, we finally getting to understand that the consensus mechanism, as was implemented at most of the use cases that I saw, is beautiful, narrow, and different as we thought. And I'll explain. Well, blockchain can verify transaction where it's native to a blockchain. It's obvious, well, you can shut it down, like in a Bitcoin. But, surprise, surprise, blockchain cannot access external input. When data or assets are allocated off-chain, the blockchain surprisingly stops to be a trust machine. And why it's important? Because most of the use cases are complex. We are not living within the on-chain arena. And when we have an off-chain architecture within our use case, the intermediate influences are getting in because we have a trust to close. Then we are failing to bypass the central authority. So what we need to do, and engineering, industry, academia, and regulators, start to rethink blockchain governance models. Because if we want to tokenize building in Manhattan, and we put the building on a token, well, it's an off-chain asset, and someone needs to verify this information. This is not a native information to a blockchain. So I think that the most important challenge today that engineer, industry, I say again, academia needs to deal with is to rethink and to rebuild blockchain governance infrastructure. And regulators need to change what they're regulating. They don't need to regulate industry. Well, AML is important, and tax is important, and protecting investors is important. What we need to regulate, first and foremost, is the intermediary. We need to regulate the stock exchange. We need to regulate the rating agencies. We need to regulate the ICO advisors, because they are the maverick that makes the landscape to move on. And this is the main effort that my research and my research group are working on. And I hope that we are going toward a decentralized future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The building in Manhattan you referred to was the one that the news came out about yesterday, tokenization of a $30 million building. Was that the one? No?
Just thinking about Manhattan. Yeah, I read about it.
Yeah, so $30 million.
I think that Harbor already had some building in Manhattan that they allegedly put on a token.
Right. But I don't know how they did it, within which frameworks they did it. So I'm really interested. It's Propeller and Fluidity, the two companies that made it happen. I'll talk, the Rachel Wolfson, one of my favorite
at the beginning of January, I'm going to host Josh Stein, the CEO of Harbor, and Steve McCune, their advisor, so maybe we can...
Oh, perfect. All right. And the next meeting, the fourth meeting of Women in Block, and today's the first. So. All right, so who's next? All right, now I'd like to invite Ms. Saria Riva, who is a regulation expert and the founder of Aliyah Law. And she's going to talk to us about the institutionalization.
It's a hard word.
Yep. And why is it?
How do we showing up?
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Yes,
So actually what I'm going to talk about relates to a lot of what Shelly said, what Rav said, what Gal just said, but from a lawyer's point of view. Not a boring lawyer, I promise you. So,
So, securities laws force institutionalization of the crypto startup market. What does it mean? If I could go back in time and say one thing to crypto entrepreneurs 3 or 4 years ago, it would be this. Live as if you were living for the second time, and if acted as wrongly the first time as you are about to act now. And why would I say this? Because 3 or 4 years ago, or even last year, people were going too far in the crypto space. They were abusing this revolutionary fundraising mechanism that blockchain has enabled. And what this brought about is regulatory scrutiny. And what does regulatory scrutiny really mean? Today we have 2 universes. We have our universe, the blockchain universe. In our universe, things are getting hard because today there are no more really ICOs, there are only STOs, right? Security token offerings. And I would say there are no more STOs, there are more STPOs, security token private offerings. And why is that? It's because regulation is not well equipped today to answer the questions that the blockchain market poses. Today, we have no really good mini IPO regimes. We have no good regimes to raise funds from retail investors. Even crowdfunding laws, they have ridiculously low raise amounts, right? Nobody's going to settle for $1 million a year. Even in Israel, it's around $1 million, the new crowdfunding act in Israel. So what this means is that private placements remain the only place to go. And what it means that the market is being forced into institutionalization by securities laws, by the way securities laws are built today. And that's too bad, because that's not what blockchain set out to do. We set out, ICOs, blockchain set out to disrupt the venture financing model, not to fit into it. And I think that in a truly progressive society, the way to innovate is not to go to the venture financing model only. Is to go to the retail investors, get their ongoing feedback, get the early adopters to be compensated, not only the entrepreneurs and the investors. And that can happen today because of the lack of regulatory answers. Now, universe number 2 is the black hole. That's the universe of your mom, your dad, your aunt, that they tell you to shut the hell up every time you talk about crypto. They have no idea what blockchain is. And the way to merge universe number 1 into universe number 2 is by introducing revolutionary regulatory regimes, like, for example, crowdfunding regimes with higher raise amounts, like mini IPO regimes like Reg A+, but that are not super expensive and lengthy to do. And I think that the way to do it, or at least try and let's say start and make this change grow, is us, the industry professionals, entrepreneurs, tax advisors, lawyers, need to work together with regulators. And that's why ask not what regulation can do for you, ask what you can do for regulation, right? I always say to my clients, don't embrace regulation. Try to help it become progressive, because that's the only way this market will grow. Not by shutting out regulation, by really embracing it, and by trying to affect a positive change on the way securities laws are dictating our way of innovating today. Thank you.
I love that insight. I think I might actually adopt it as my modus operandi. So next on stage is Adi. Where's Adi? Adi from Moscow. There you go. Adi is an expert in token economics and everything related, and we're going to talk about that. And how to improve the world of blockchain and crypto. There you go.
Hi everybody. So great to be here. Last time I was at a conference, I took a picture of the ladies' restroom and said, only blockchain conferences are there no lines in the restrooms, and all the restrooms are actually available. So here I was in my flick minute.
That's a good measurement.
For you.
Yeah. Maybe we could put that as like an off-chain data you can collect to monitor the numbers of women in conferences.
come to blockchain events by women.
Right.
No lines.
No lines. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming today. Love to learn more from you. Every time I talk to you, I learn more and more about economics. I studied economics in college, so this is very, very exciting for me. But what is token economics exactly? Can you put that in a few words?
Sure. So I think the best way to describe tokenomics is just by giving an example. So I'll give an example of a token economy that I designed a while ago. And I know that the speaker after me is Kolu, so it's something that is similar to Kolu for another plan that I did. And when you think about tokenomics and you architect token economies, you really want to see where you can capture value, which the value is not captured by dollars, fiat, other cryptocurrencies. It's like solar panels that want to capture the energy of the sun, right? The ground captures it, but you can't do anything with it, so you need the solar panels. So this is a wallet that clients go to merchants to get a cup of coffee and they get a discount. Okay, this is something very trivial. How do you build a token economy for that kind of interaction between the merchant and the end user? The best way to think about it is you would go and say, okay, instead of using $9 to buy whatever, a coffee and a breakfast, buy 9 tokens. But then we just swapped. We colored the token from dollars to tokens. We did nothing. We didn't expand credit. We just didn't do anything. So what we thought about doing is taking that and saying, okay, let's look at it from the merchant's point of view. The merchant just gave, like the guy behind me in line is going to pay $10 for the same amount of value that they're getting. And this person is going to get $9. So how do we capture the $1 difference because the merchant actually gave that $1? Maybe he's giving a discount, maybe he's lowering his profits. So that $1 that the merchant gave, let's give him a token. Let's give him the amount of discount that he gave in tokens. And what can that merchant do with the token? He can collaborate with other merchants. So for example, I'm in a neighborhood and I'm a barber, and this is a coffee shop, and this is a laundry service. Now, obviously, the barber needs to wash their towels in the laundry needs to take a cup of coffee, the coffee maker needs to get a haircut. So this is how you create a B2B economy which did not exist beforehand. It's not trading $1 to one token, it's actually expanding the credit and enabling these merchants to collaborate where they wouldn't specifically collaborate, so they would prefer each other. Okay, and this is a model known as the Ville in Switzerland. If anyone knows about it, it's stated that Switzerland is very economically stable because they have a very strong B2B network. So that's like a good example of what true tokenization and true tokenomics means. It's expanding the value, capturing the value, and then enabling human connections and value transfer between humans, which would not necessarily exist beforehand. And another circle of this would be that the neighbor upstairs who goes to the coffee shop, she's like a graphic designer, she's a freelancer, so she can actually accept the tokens now, and then we created a whole ecosystem of lots and lots of professionals that could take part in this.
Great, so that brings us back to how blockchain is creating new business models and new economies and new realities, so to speak, right? So could you expand a little bit about the types of tokens that are there?
Sure. So when I look at it from a bird's eye view, then the things that are less, I personally am less passionate about, and I really, both with Gal and with Zavia, I really connected to your talks. It's just tokenizing existing assets. Okay, it's not going to be a security from paper, right? It's going to be a security that is a token, and it's going to go through the same laws and everything. So we may have optimized a certain financial tool that existed already, and maybe the investors have lots of advantages of liquidating early and stuff like that, and it's wonderful. But it's not something, in my opinion, that is revolutionary, and I totally shout out for, blockchain is a revolution. It was intended to enhance human connections, enhance value transfer, decentralize, and stuff like that. So I would like to talk about more the other tokens, which fall under, for example, utility tokens, which I just discussed. Okay, so the token is actually a store of value, what money was meant to be, and it's actually transferable between the end users. Another type of token that is non-fungible tokens, NFTs, which means that it may well be, you know, that if I want to now tokenize my DNA, okay, that is a very unique combination, and there's no two same tokens, so that would be like a non-fungible token. Anything in general, the word token should be used when we want to transfer value, which is not information. Okay, a revolution of the internet is for information. The revolution of blockchain is for value transfer. So we want to transfer value. I want to give you something, and then you want to give me something in return. Then we may use a token in order to facilitate that barter. So that would be like the in general definition for me.
That's a very interesting concept, tokenizing DNA. So creating a lot of mini-me's, so to speak, selling DNA to people. What?
No, it's not necessarily that. It means that it's part of, you know, blockchain giving you ownership over your own personal data. So part of it will be, you know, everything that has to do with your bank account, your whatever your properties, and also your actual.
That's really cool. Properties. So then we create, again, new models of sharing that information, right, the decentralized AD, and we're also creating new models of advertising, right? So instead of giving this information for free to Facebook and Google and others, we can actually sell it. So that's a very exciting concept, for me at least. So when should a company really issue a token?
Yeah, so I think that, again, if you can, you know, take the white paper and change the STS, ABC, XYZ to dollars and Bitcoin, then please don't tokenize. It's just you're not adding any added value to the world, and you know, us people, investors and users, we actually adopt things that, you know, have some value to us. So I think that it doesn't make sense when you're like, okay, why can't I pay this in dollars? Like you guys are now limiting it to only your token, so now there's like a revolving door economy. You come in, you give your Bitcoin, give your dollars, take the token, pass it on to someone else, that someone else cashes it out, gets their dollars, no good. So what you want to do is when you're actually thinking about tokenizing, I've developed like a methodology in which you actually want to keep the token within this ecosystem and have as much velocity, which is transfer of the token between the people, but actually to really capture value, so not just, you know, pass that around. And this would look something like, okay, let's look at who are these people in the middle, okay? Because investors are not the people in the middle. They're not the people who are actually going to pass around that token. So who are these people in the middle? What types are there? For example, in my earlier example, then we had the end user. The end user was the motivator, the incentivator of actually creating the token. So you're seeing how the token is minted. He's not part of it, but he's actually, initiating that first transaction. But then in the middle, we would have all types. Local businesses, freelancers, maybe the networks would want to onboard that in order to revive the local economy. So you would want to identify the stakeholders and understand what are the use cases. Okay, so how would the merchant interact with the freelancer? How would the merchant interact with the merchant? And try to have as many to many connections between these people in the middle and try to aggregate or try to see which best practices can you actually think about. And when you have more than 2, 3, 5, then you actually understand that it's not like a one-trick pony token. It's going to be a token that is going to actually expand the credit between the people. You want to see how the token is actually cashed out to real life, because, you know, I need to pay electricity and I need to pay, you know, my employees in the cafe. But that thing in the middle should really capture a new kind of value.
Cool. I want to talk about the coin creation, the token creation. Is there a benefit to having a hard limit on the number of tokens in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so, okay, so the hard cap is, I'll tell you my take on it. Okay, on the ICO, it would go something like this. Okay, how are we going to create value? We are going to issue 1 million tokens. It's going to be, each token is going to be like $1. So we're starting off with $1 million worth of economy. And then because of the scarcity of the 1 million tokens, and the price will rise because the demand is going to rise and we can't issue more tokens, and there we have it. You know, yay, problem solved. But the thing is that if we want to really interact, then, you know, we can't have something worth $1, $5, and then 50 cents.
And what can we do? We're still kind of pegging things to fiat. We don't necessarily understand what one Bitcoin means or one Ether means. We're still in that translation phase. And since that is the case, then people can't have, pay 5 tokens for the same thing and tomorrow morning pay 1 token. It's very difficult, and that is going to really abrupt the adoption of the token. But the second thing is that why do we want to limit the amount of tokens? We have a certain potential, endless potential of connections and collaboration between human beings. And by creating scarcity, we're actually capping the amount of interactions that we can do, because I would love to interact with you, Anne, but I don't have enough shekels. I would love to interact with everyone. I can't, So once we're limiting the amount of tokens, I understand it economically, but we need to understand that we're limiting the potential. So what we want to do is say, okay, let's expand as the economy grows. So if we want the economy to grow from a $1 billion economy to a $150 million economy, let's create a good tool that will also mint the tokens as the demand rises, and not only think about today and think about having happy investors, but miserable adoption.
Right. So I really I agree with this point of view. Also, why would you interact with me if you expect the token to become much more valuable in the future? So you're going to keep it and you're not going to interact with me. And what we want to do here is to facilitate this sort of ecosystem interaction, right? So what kind of models do you want to see in the future? And I would like to conclude with kind of understanding your grand vision for this industry.
My grand vision is to have as many tokens as possible, which makes sense. So to capture as much value that needs to be captured, and obviously we would have tokens that kind of collide with each other, but we don't need 1 million tokens who are actually doing the same thing. But we could look at it like on a regional or a neighborhood level. We could have the neighborhood token, we could have the regional token, we could have the city token, and I actually have a good example. I have 3 examples. So I have a good example to end with a project I'm consulting for, and it's called the Give token. And the Give token, you asked about, and also in our previous talks about diversity and inclusion and everything. And the thing about the Give token is it's a token for kids. And why aren't kids included in the ecosystem? Because money is corrupted. And we can't track money, and they can buy drugs with it, and they can buy candy with it. And in general, money is not a good tool for kids to go on and about. There's no control. So creating an ecosystem for our kids is an amazing thing, because the kids early on, they're very intuitive with money, right? So they can learn what money is all about, they can learn about spending, they can actually empower themselves and buy what they want. They can also contribute and volunteer, and also all these things, but it's all in a very protected environment. So an economy like this, just 1 second, would look like this. The parent, instead of giving $40 in allowance to their kid, and that kid buys drugs or sweets with, they're giving a $40 allowance within the system, and the system actually mints a proportional amount of tokens. And then these tokens are actually within a walled garden, and in that walled garden, very, very quickly, you would want to include all the advertisers who want to take part, obviously, to corrupt your kids, just kidding, or all the charities, or all these. We actually had an economy, I co-founded AppCoin, and we had something called Gilim, which was like 150,000 students in Israel who actually collaborated with a token similar to this. But the thing is that everything is for the kids, so the kids can actually govern their own token. The kids can get the policies.
Are they incentivized in some way to get tokens? Do they get tokens for good deeds?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. You can interact with charities. You have we have like a reserve fund for tuition for kids who are from families who can afford the $40. So you're actually creating an ecosystem, which makes a lot of sense to everyone, but it gives and empowers kids to also take part of actually building that token, seeing which values do you want the token to hold. Is it a good Adidas token? Is it a donation token? How does this token, if you're donating your time, you get like more tokens into your wallet. So all these things are very interesting, and it's not only including women, it's also inclusion of kids who cannot have financial independence from the age of 7.
Right, so that's kind of teaching them in this trusted environment, right? I want to see an application that has a smart contract for, let's say, getting good grades or behaving well. Because my kids, they say, you know, Mommy, you promised, but you didn't keep. That never happens, by the way. But yeah, a smart contract for them. So
We can just use like to electrify them. Yeah, very fulfilling.
thank you so much, Adi.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
So you were talking about creation of businesses in order to have an actual organization of an economy. What do you think that should be based on? Is it like geographically based? Is it common interest based?
Yeah. So what we saw, yeah, the question was the ecosystems, are they like, do they have a certain attribute, or they're geographically based, are they like-minded people, or their passions and interests? When we were in 2012, I co-founded a company that for 4 years enabled any community to create their own token. My co-founders were actually the Bancorp founders, a very talented group of people. And so what we saw is that in general there's like three. There's geographical, the demographical, and the interest-based. So interest-based, we have like fashion lovers, music lovers, vegan lovers, veganation. Demographic, we had moms, we had students, and geographic obviously is like Kolo and Tel-Aviv, or all these different city coins or neighborhood coins and stuff like that.
Thank you, Adi.
Thank you so much.
Now I'd like to invite Dr. Daniel, who is the chief economist of Kolo. And we're going to talk to her about, continue this conversation about token economics and the angle of community tokens. So I'd love her to just a little bit explain the token economics behind Kolo.
So it was great to see Adi does this, because, you know, I always talk and I do this thing, so Adi, thank you, now I'm not alone. I'll just add some color to this. So the token economics, the example I always give is, we all sit in the pool, you know, the kiddie pool on the roof, and there's things that are bringing, you know, water pours in, and there's water coming out, and the more we can create the, you know, the circulation, and if we can make the water coming in, you know, faster than the water coming out, then the rise, you know, the level of the water rises and more will join the pool. So, you know, that's the illustration for token economics, and I'll make it, you know, more economics in a minute. But I think Adi said a lot of these things. The idea is, what does a token economics is built on? Really, it's very simple. You want to give incentives for adoption, incentives for behavior that creates real value. So it can be economic or social behavior that creates value to the participants. So you want incentives, you want to create that prosperity or to create that value, and the token is the mechanism that allows you to allocate that value created to the participants. And I think, you know, these are the three principles, and many people talked about it, and each one is a challenge by itself.
So the water example is very interesting. However, in the financial world, even in the traditional financial world, when a bank is giving you a loan, there is no real money that's being added somewhere to offset. There's just numbers added in the end, right? So in this example of water, is it really water? Like, you're adding kind of value that doesn't exist, the future projected.
So I think even in credit, even in traditional financial markets, the idea with credit is you're extending credit because now it can finance economic activity that can create value. So you're extending credit to businesses because they want them to invest and develop. So I think that's not where it's different from traditional idea that, you know, if you can create that value, can share. And I think many people said earlier on, it's more the concept that blockchain is trying to do is to say, once that value is being created, especially if we have a network effect, if we have two-sided markets, we need buyers, we need sellers, and definitely if we go into ecosystems and we think of partners, and we don't talk about city partners, then once that value being created, it's if it's a centralized platform, it enjoys that value and extracts rents. So being a competition economist in my training, that's what it does. When you think of where would the value be created in a token economy, either you created a new activity that created value by itself, or you really put in competition where it wasn't, and instead of those centralized entities extracting the rents, you're trying to allocate it among people, or really you're facilitating synergies in an ecosystem that haven't existed. It's a little bit like the first, but that Dee talked about, the B2B and other interactions that wouldn't otherwise be as efficient. So I think these are three different sources of value. When you're talking about different use cases in blockchain, they each kind of tackle, potentially a different dimension as to where that value comes from.
Okay, that's really interesting. So we're talking about value creation again, but more from a standpoint of distributing, not only creating but distributing value. Right?
I think that's the two sides. It's the creating and it's the distributing thing.
All right. So why do communities need a coin?
So I think that
Their own
coin. So I think someone talked about when do you not need it. So we talked about you don't need it if you can replace it with dollar. You don't need it if you can replace it with the word database. But the idea is we talked about if you want not only to create the incentive and not only to create the value, but what you really want to do is connect the change or connect the incentive to change behavior with the value of the token. And what do I mean? If you're looking at a city as an ecosystem, and what you want to do is you want to create that shared incentive that people will understand that actions that they're taking, economic actions such as where do they go and buy their coffee, and whether they carpool into the city instead of using their own car, and all their city activities, to the extent that you want to create that identity, meaning that the economic prosperity being created is manifesting itself in the value of the token and what they see, that's where you want to create a token that is different from fiat. Because it's very, very important to acknowledge the challenge. If you can do it with dollar, it's more efficient, okay? You don't need to, as I think Adi talked about, you don't need to bring it into the system in order to move it, in order to take it out. That's not where you create efficiencies. So really, I think the only reason to do it is if you really want to create that connection between the activity that people are taking and the value that they're seeing in the token, which then has to be separate from the value of the fiat, for good and bad, because at the end, we're also living in a world which is outside any local community. So that's why the analogy of the pool. There's always going to be money flowing out. Businesses are going to take a local currency and they're going to pay rent, and they're likely, not in the near future, going to pay with the local currency. But if you can think of the ecosystem being a little bit richer, if you can think of a municipality in that ecosystem, so maybe you can't pay rent in your local currency, but you can pay your waste fees to the municipality in the local currency. So now,
how does this local token economy intersect with the municipal economy?
So, again, there was a question from the audience before, what can tokens be like? And Polo chose to focus on the use case of geography, meaning a local currency, and in particular, we focus on cities. It's nothing in the technology that focuses on city. It's more of the economic model that you're trying to build. So we believe that cities, the numbers by 2025, 70% of the world population is going to live in cities, and we see this trend called, smart cities, where even if you're not a smart city, you want to think of the city as an economic, social entity in and by itself. And when we looked at the agenda of smart cities, we understood that, they're all about, okay, we have a lot of data. Let's just collect data and understand what we can do with the data. Then the second piece was, but it's about people. We want to listen to the people. And then the evolution was, okay, now we have data, we know what people want, let's offer solutions, great solutions, technological solutions that will improve everyone's life. And then, I sit and I say, but at the end of these very fancy solutions, recycling, energy consumption, all of that, there's a little person that needs to make a little decision. Do I throw, my Coke bin, into the trash or the recycling? Do I take someone else in my car today in order to have two instead of one in my car? So the incentives we feel are missing from this agenda of smart cities, and that's what we're trying to do, to prove that the use case of using a local currency with all of what we talked about, a true token economy, can actually incentivize and make these changes in an ecosystem, in a city ecosystem that will create prosperity, will actually serve the agenda, and will be shared by residents.
That's a grand vision. However, you mentioned
it's a long way.
It's a long way.
You have to look up to
you
the
keep
sky
saying,
and then think about baby steps.
You keep saying, yeah, it's a long way away, not in the near future. I have a feeling that may have to do with regulation. So I'm wondering if you can shed a light of some regulations that may be slowing down the adoption of crypto and some things like jurisdictional shopping. Also in the light of the whole trend of cities, right? Moving to cities. In China, for example, they're now building 17 huge cities and moving everything up from village to cities, building these huge infrastructures, which is obviously the country is hostile to crypto, but I'm wondering if eventually it's going to turn around and we'll see this huge crypto trend coming out of the Chinese cities. But I'd love to hear more about the regulation and jurisdiction.
So just one word before the regulation so that it doesn't sound like it's all the train. Kodo has 4 operating communities with, close to 200,000 users and, thousands of merchants. So the vision is to see ecosystems which include municipalities, include anchor institutions, whether it's hospitals, big employers, as part of that ecosystem where everyone is incentivizing, uses the city currency. So, there are steps towards it, but obviously, there's a long way to go. Regulation is certainly, being an ex-regulator, so I have to admit, it's a stick and a carrot, and you have to make sure that the carrot is there, okay? So the stick is, it's very hard to be regulated, you have to do AML, you have to do a lot of, you have to have your audited financials, and it's a financial institution, you keep other people's money, and it's very, very hard, it's truly hard to be a regulated entity. However, the carrot is that, and I think Gal talked about it earlier, it's not, unless you're really living on chain, you're interacting with these intermediaries who are the gatekeepers to, from the traditional financial world. And in order to have these necessary interactions with the banking system, with all of the financial systems, there has to be a regulation. And there's going to be regulation that's going to care about, anti-money laundering. There's going to be regulation about taxes. There's going to be regulation about, whether it's a consumer protection. And I think that it needs to always focus on what carrot do I give, because that's the true incentive. It's an incentive that's going to come from the business need to do that in order to have the right powerful partners to actually, grow.
And as the last question, I'd like to understand the slogan of Kodo, which is turning coffee into crypto. Do you care to explain?
It's one of my favorite t-shirts. There was a long evolution of t-shirts, and my favorite one is turning coffee into crypto. And the point was that what we focus in this local model, the city currency, the idea is to actually, it be part of the daily interactions that people do. So if you want to make people take big steps and make changes, you better first understand how you penetrate into their daily habits. Because if I get my coffee, if I get my coffee and it turns into my city currency, and then I can use my city currency for something else, then you actually talk about adoption. And adoption not by, crypto traders or people who chose to be in the crypto space because that's what they wanted. They're actually excited about the animal, spirit in it. No, you actually want to get adoption by those who are just, going to buy their coffee and making the decisions. It's the adoption by, everyone, every person, residents, businesses, I think is the big challenge. And it's the big challenge in any way, but in any possible way you can think of. And I think that's what makes it exciting, because as an ex-regulator, that's what regulators fear the most, and rightly so. If you're going to deal with a person who actually wanted to go and get coffee, and they didn't intend to get crypto, you better worry about consumer protection. So I think that it's the big gains, but the big challenge is how do you get that mass adoption so that it can be a true, relevant incentive for those token economies that different people want to create for different reasons.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. While I am pulling up the next presentation, anybody wants to give a 30-second pitch about their crypto blockchain startup?
Hello, folks. Okay, it's working. First of all, thank you for coming, and it's a great pleasure to be here with Yael, by the way, with colleagues. And my project I want to present today is basically called Virtual Crypto. If you heard, basically we're doing payment solutions for small businesses, for industries. Payment solution, we're speaking about software and hardware. So basically ATM machines, POS systems. And one of the main solutions we are given right now in the United States economy is basically the legal cannabis industry, which laws, if you're speaking about laws, so the federal government law for buying the cannabis, even if it's legalized, it still allows to buy the cannabis only with cash. So crypto is the new solution to buy the legal cannabis in the United States, in Colorado, in California, in Canada. So basically we are operate with the cannabis market right now.
I work in a company of 20 people, small company, about 19 are men. So it's nice for me to see women in this sphere, and I hope to see many more. So Olam is building a supply chain over blockchain protocol, and and I'm here to tell you why blockchain can cure the diseases of supply chain. So just to put the supply chain, the story of Olam in context, I want to say that Olam is a not-for-profit foundation and incorporated in Switzerland, and we are currently holding a private ICO, which means that we are selling a token in order to raise money. I want to start by telling you about the supply chain market. So, supply chain is a huge market. How huge? It's a $10 billion market, and I'm just talking about the logistics of supply chain, not the goods itself. There are 2 billion shipments sent globally every year, and everything around us, I mean, it relies on supply chain. What you wear, what you eat, the car that you drive, whether you bought it in the store or it's got delivered to your house, it all relies on supply chain. And yet this, sorry, it's my phone. And yet this industry that is so important, is so big, is still in 2018 managed through papers. It's all paper-based. And there's an amazing number of, in 1 year, 900,000 man-years are spent just on dealing with documents of the logistics of supply chain. Just the documents themselves spent so many times, and it's an amazing number, but if you think of it, every shipment takes about 300 pages, and 20 people just to handle the changes of custody, just the paperwork around it. So there are many inefficiencies in the supply chain. And it's because it's a very fast-growing market, it's a very chaotic and complex market. There's lack of visibility in the supply chain. So if there's a problem at the beginning of a shipment, the party that is expecting the shipment may not know about it, and vice versa. There's about 55 billion of fraud and theft in the supply chain every year, and about 1.3 billion tons of food that is wasted. So for every tomato that you buy in the shop, you actually pay for 2, because 1 got tossed away. There's a problem with governments. Since each government has its own way of dealing with documentation of shipments and custom and so on. And last but not least, there's a very big problem with distrust of the competitive parties of the supply chain, and this is actually what has prevented them from cooperating all through the years. So they cannot share database, and if there is the slightest chance that a database will be compromised, full digitalization of the supply chain cannot happen. So, and all these inefficiencies, they cost about $400 billion a year. And just to think about this number, it's the GDP of Israel. So, and it just might get tossed away. But then came the blockchain, and the blockchain is actually the first system that enable trustless communication. And what blockchain enables the supply chain is, for the first time, to share data, to communicate without having to trust each other, because blockchain is open to everyone, no one is its owner, and so they can work in a trustless way. And what Olam is doing is building a solution for the supply chain parties, not just the logistic parties, all the parties, including insurance companies and financial companies, and they can all share data and communicate and consume digital services. And it's an open source, decentralized standard protocol. We already have a proof of concept working with top-tier logistic companies. We have an amazing advisory board of CEO of Global DHL. We have other C-level executives from top logistic companies. So the industry really embraced this holistic solution. And we also have great cryptocurrency advisors, and this is needed because the Olam platform is powered by the Olam token. What Olam is doing, what we are doing, is building a decentralized open source protocol that tackles these inefficiencies and hopefully will bring the supply chain into the 21st century. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer questions, and also join our electronic foundation.
Thank you. All right. So now I'd like to invite Samara Derkley, who is a social media maven from Koti, and we're going to discuss. See, one microphone is not enough for me. No, so we're going to discuss Koti and DAG, which is a distinct type of decentralized ledger, and a little bit about the payment systems. And that's going to be our last discussion of the day. So tune in. All right. Yes.
Hello, everybody. So, like I'm from Koti. Koti is the first blockchain protocol that is optimized for decentralized payments, DApps, and stablecoin issuers. We have already on board 5,000 merchants, we have 80,000 users, and more partnerships are on the other discussed.
Could you elaborate a little bit about the users and who is your community at Koti?
Wow, the community, first of all, we have a big community. Okay,
very active.
Very active. We have over 30,000 community members on Telegram, over 25,000 on Facebook, over 18,000 on Twitter. I'm starting with the numbers because numbers do matter. The community is mixed between people that love technology, that ask a lot of questions about technology, people that are investors, that community very much matters to them, people that are early adopters in cryptos. Crypto is around from 2009, and they want to be, they want to be on top of everything.
They want to see that work, right? That's what is bringing them this world of crypto. How did you manage to build that big community?
Not by myself, for sure. We've been around like for a year now, Okay, we're a team of around 5 people, most of them girls.
Yeah.
They're here right now. We're together for a long time, and it's not easy at all. You know, you're counting down from 1,000 and then 2,000, 15,000, and it goes on. So I think it's mostly to be, like good content. Good content, to give them information, to educate them, to answer 24 hours a day if needed, to have a lot of moderation, everybody counts,
Right.
A lot of love, that's the solution for everything.
Hey, you have to be real, right? Especially in this industry where it's super transparent. Everything is out there in the open, and your company, the people, your solution, is coming under so much scrutiny because people are investing, right? They're investing their assets into the company, right? Eventually, their assets or their efforts,
That's the thing, if we're talking about, something the value of something. So it's money, but it's time, and it's also, it's social media. At the end of the day, everybody can say whatever they want. So you need to make sure you're on top of things, and information that you're giving is direct and honest, and everyone counts.
But I understand that in your community specifically, because you are building a decentralized ledger solution, right? So you are catering, and it's a protocol, so you're catering to developers, right? At the end of the day, people who will build dApps on Coty's platform, right? So how is it different to have the separate communities, right? The community of developers, the community of users, of end users that are paying, or businesses. You have maybe 4 or 5 different types of communities that you have to support, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And also right now we are code on GitHub. There's another community, Discord. That's the thing. There's so many other fields, so many other social media platforms that you're involved with when you speak about technology.
Yeah.
Okay? So the rules are different. And I think there are different kind of conversation, you have the deep conversations with the audience on Medium blogs and articles and webinars that we're hosting as well in terms of speaking technology.
I see you guys a lot as an ambassador of DAG. Can you speak a little bit about what that is, how it's different from blockchain, and maybe what kind of benefits it has over blockchain?
So I think we can talk about blockchain, that it's a beautiful thing, it's decentralized, and there are so many, you can build a system about the blockchain, but at the end of the day, when we speak about mass adoption, and we speak about, more the use of cryptocurrency in the mainstream, so you need a different solution, and this is DAG. DAG is Diagram Acyclic Graph. It's a different kind of technology, mostly built on machine learning, and this is what our trust chain, our consensus is built on top of it, which is much more scalable in terms of tens of thousands of transactions you can use on it. It's much faster. The more transactions, the more people are using it, the faster it goes.
10,000 per second, right?
Yes.
Which is incredible because at this time, it may take sometimes several seconds, sometimes several minutes to conduct a crypto transaction on a traditional Bitcoin blockchain, for example. So you move from that to 10,000, right? So DAG is helping enable that type of flexibility and scalability.
As well,
and lower fees.
Because when you speak about nobody, today, nobody really wants to deal with the transaction when it comes to Bitcoin, when it comes to Ethereum and gas, right? It costs a lot of fees, so that will change that.
Yeah, so there are no miners, right? In the system, there are no miners, so there's no gas. There's no gas. So there's a very little transaction fee at all.
It costs less, and then when you think about the bigger picture, people and mass adoption, people, merchants, other users that want to build their own payment system, this is the solution for them. This is what Coty aiming for as well. This is what we do. We want to make cryptocurrencies adapt more to
mainstream.
Yeah,
To mainstream adoption. Okay. That's very interesting. So, what do you see in Cody's future in terms of what kind of businesses or partners or users? What do you think will come first?
So again, we're aiming for DAG, our trust chain. This is the consensus that's built on the DAG. It will be, we're aiming for enterprises that can build their own payment mechanism, their own white label solution for payments on top of our technology. Merchants, okay, we have also the CotiPay. This is the system that is built on the infrastructure of CotiPay, which merchants and consumers can transfer goods and services on top of that. Of course, Coti is also a stablecoin, like I said. We have our own stablecoin. So governments, this is a big deal today. Like this year, 2018, it's the stablecoin year. So governments that want to build their own crypto, their own coin, can use our technology as well. And we didn't speak about stablecoins, but that's a big deal, you know. Like.
Right. Why is everybody so excited about stablecoins?
I think that today it's a very volatile market, so people just want to hold on their coins, and they just like they're afraid to lose the value when they trade or like if they use it. So that's why stablecoin is coming to the picture. Actually, if you stablecoin, for those who maybe not know, stablecoin it's a coin that is pegged to the American dollar. Okay, our coin is 10 cents. Okay, the Coti DAG, which is a stablecoin, is pegged to 10 cents. And when you have some value that doesn't change according to the volatility of the market, you're not afraid to use it. So you can go and buy something with it without any fear that it will change its value a day after. Okay, so you don't need to hold on to it. You actually can use it on an everyday life. And this is the next big thing that's going to happen when we're talking about crypto. Okay, we want to use it like we use fiat, right? We want to give it actually a use case in everyday life and everyday activity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it seems like stablecoins are going to definitely play an important role in the future. That was great. I love that overview. Thank you so much. That was Tamar from Coti. Anybody have any questions? So thank you so much for coming and for being a part of this blockchain revolution, as well as helping create a community of women engaged and learning from each other. And we'd love to have you at the next event, which most likely is going to take place on the 1st of November, Thursday night. And the details are going to come out shortly. We're going to have one in December, and we're going to have one every month. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.